Law Matters? Of course it does. Hi, I'm Debbie Moraes, your host and moderator of this long-running program, which continues to provide legal information, relevant examples, and practical assistance to help you with law matters because the law matters. A better understanding of the law puts you in a better place to decide how to help yourself, your family, and at times your business. As we present various topics, you may decide to handle some issues yourself. We're prepared to try to help you do that. If you do decide to enlist professional counsel, you'll be better prepared, and as a result, so will the counsel you select. Our goal, as always, is to help you save time, money, and to achieve the best possible results. And also, as always, we want to welcome and thank Attorney David Bazar from the Bazar & Associates Law Firm in East Providence, who continues to weigh in on the topics that we tackle and provide us with insights and some interesting anecdotes. So today, the essentials of business. Interestingly, in Forbes, the news is that women are starting businesses at unprecedented rates. From tech startups to fashion empires, women are breaking into all industries and making a name for themselves. Apparently, there are 13 million businesses in the U.S. alone. So certainly some people say this is a difficult time for startups, but some of the most successful businesses in history, recent history too, were started during difficult times. We think of Uber and Venmo for some examples. Some savvy entrepreneurs have seen opportunity where others see only risk. We're here to try to help you mitigate some of that risk today. There are times that we think about, it's such an exciting time to start a business, and it is exciting, and it's challenging, but you're ready to fulfill your passion and to follow your dreams, and we want to help that, of course. So how do you do that while protecting yourself personally and with taxes and compliance and the business form and the structure? We're here to help you mitigate some of those potential risks. So, Attorney Bazar, tell us, when someone is starting a business, I help people start business, do they need a lawyer?
When you're first starting, do you need a lawyer? Probably not right out of the gate, depending on what it is you're doing. If you're developing an idea and you're in the process of figuring out if it's something that's going to work, you don't need a lawyer at that point. When you start transacting business, and you want to take your idea and turn it into money and a business of some sort, then you probably do need an attorney, and you probably need an accountant as well.
So at the point someone says, I have an idea, I'm going to provide this service, create this product, people can do it just out of their home office or whatever, but that also can be fraught. Some people can just say, I'm just going to just and only sell it in this small geographic area. It won't be a problem. I'll be fine. Perhaps. But that also can cause troubles. And I think this is probably a good idea to think about even the structure when someone's just starting a business.
All right. So
how do they do that?
You raised in the question
Several.
Two different issues, I think. One is you're creating an idea or a product, and that idea or product, as you develop it, may need to be protected. So I would certainly think you might want to have an attorney if you have a unique idea or unique product that could be patented or trademarked or have a copyright for it. So those are types of things as the product is being developed or the idea is being developed that you'd like to figure out if you have something that can be protected, so that as you grow it and you now want to take the next step that you raised of turning that product, idea, or service into a business, you have something that's protected that you can now go out and use to make money with. And now the corporation or the LLC or the partnership or however it is that you're going to grow that business becomes the structure that you need to speak to an attorney about, because different structures have different protections, and they also have different ability to raise capital to grow the business.
So at the very beginning when you were mentioning, sometimes you have an idea for a business and it's very unique. Many people, when they start out, I know we speak to people often who think that they have a unique idea. In fact, it isn't. So we try to help them, encourage them to check that out a little bit further. Sometimes it might be a new application for it, or maybe it's not, or maybe it's a new way to work with that product. Or maybe it's just a better use for it somehow. But better than you invest now and find out later, it's a good idea to see if you can find out, do some research to see if it's already in patent pending someplace. Some people can do a quick search themselves. In the state of Rhode Island, the state of Massachusetts, do you need just a business lawyer, or do you need to have a patent attorney specifically to go looking at this?
Well, if you have a product that you want to try to protect with a patent, I would definitely suggest that you hire someone who specializes in patents. Same thing with copyright or trademarks. But the idea is, if you have something that's protectable, hire someone and make sure you protect it, because that may be the very beginning of the value of what you're going to develop into a business.
And when people are first starting out, they may say, this isn't too difficult. I don't really need any kind of corporate protection. They might not even know what it entails. But for many beginners, a sole proprietorship is the way that they handle it. Let's go through some of the advantages and disadvantages to help people some way think about how they might want to proceed. So if you have just starting out, it's just going to be me. What is a sole proprietorship and what are its parameters?
The advantage of a sole proprietorship is it's simple. You don't really need an attorney. You probably don't even need an accountant yet at that point in time. If you file your own taxes and you know how to do that, you can probably just pass all of the income through to yourself on your tax return. And the advantage is simply the simplicity. The disadvantages are you are liable for everything that you do correctly or incorrectly. You are liable for all of the contracts you enter into. If you are working out of a commercial lease that you have to enter into, you're going to be signing that personally, so you're liable for that. So there's the liability issue for not only what you do, but for all of the things that you buy and all of the contracts you enter into.
So maybe that's a good point to discuss now, too. Sole proprietorship, I don't need to go through corporate papers and filings, but I might have vendors come to my office/home office/ whatever, business somewhere. I might be signing contracts. I don't even know all of the contracts I might be signing. Good to retain a lawyer just to have him eyeball it before I start, especially with rent lease property, which can be risky.
At that point in time, when you're going to open up a storefront, say, and you're going to be transacting business with the public in a storefront where you're going to be entering into a lease, maybe you're even getting a machine to take credit cards and payments and that type of thing. And what are the contracts involved with those, and who's signing those, and who's responsible for those expenses? And if you wanted to change it, what are the contractual rights and obligations you might have to just say, no, this vendor didn't give me a very good deal, I want to change it. So yes, at that point in time, when you're going to start transacting business with the public, you definitely want to speak to an attorney and find out what options you might have.
And many times, people such as myself help startups, marketing plans and business plans. Lawyers can look over, I should say, a business plan for some things that might be glaringly obvious, but not all things are. If someone is starting a business and they say, I don't really have to have employees right now, I might just use a freelancer, I might have an independent contractor. Even at that point, let's discuss that. What are the parameters? What do you need to look at when you are thinking of a relationship with an independent contractor, and if they're on site or if they're working with your products or services and something goes awry?
Yeah, so there's really specific definitions of whether someone's an employee or an independent contractor. So if you hire someone to do a job and you set the hours that they're going to do the job and the expectations of what they're going to do and give them the equipment to do the job, even if you call them an independent contractor, they're probably an employee. And then you need workers' compensation insurance. And if you don't have it, there are penalties for not having it. If you want someone to be an independent contractor and you set it up in the right way so that they are an independent contractor, and you maybe would even enter into an agreement or a contract that says they're an independent contractor, and you can even file paperwork with the Department of Labor saying that they're an independent contractor. Then they're an independent contractor. You don't need workers' comp. But there are other things that you'd have to then worry about.
Such as?
Well, if someone gets hurt at work and they're a workers' compensation covered employee, that's their remedy. They get workers' compensation. If someone gets hurt at a work site that's an independent contractor and you did something negligently, then they can sue you for liability because they're not covered by the workers' compensation statute.
So there's that, and then there's just general insurance issues if someone is transacting business out of a home office, the comings and goings where things could possibly happen. That might be more of an insurance issue than a legal issue, but if you don't handle it, it's certainly going to be a legal issue. What flags are raised when you think of someone starting a business relative to where they're starting a business, at their home or in a city or in a town, licenses, and speak to that if you would.
Yeah, so there's zoning issues. Depending on what type of business you're running out of your home, that might be okay. You might be allowed to have a home office, but you might not be allowed to have a home office. If there's no zoning issue, then you don't have to worry about that. But you have to have a license depending on what type of job you're doing. So if you're opening up a beauty shop, of course, there's going to be Department of Health licensing and licensing for the people working there and that type of thing.
And what about even when someone is selecting a business name? Does that require a lawyer, and where?
Well, does it require a lawyer? No. But depending on what you're going to do and where you're going to do it, for example, if you're going to open up a new business in the state of Rhode Island, you can check the corporate database at the Secretary of State's office to see if the name is being used by someone else. And that, if it's not, you might be able to then use that name and secure that name for your business. There are other ways to protect names too. So just because Coca-Cola may not be using the name Coca-Cola in Rhode Island, although they probably are in the corporate database, but if they're not, doesn't mean you can go in and use it because it's trademarked.
Makes sense. So if someone is beginning to think about the various aspects of their business and they're growing a business, at what point do you think that someone should consider another structure, including S, Cs, LLPs?
So there's two kinds of considerations into what corporate structure you might want to use, whether it's a corporation with a C or an S election, or an LLC, which could be disregard the entity, taxed directly to you as a sole proprietor, like you were before perhaps, or a partnership, or taxed as a corporation. Those are all accounting questions, I believe, and therefore I always tell people, I will form the corporation or LLC for you. You speak to your accountant and tell me how you want me to elect you to be taxed. But there are other considerations too. And I hinted at this a little bit at the beginning, but if you are going to create a business that you think you eventually want to grow and have other people involved with, or perhaps sell someday, the type of corporation or LLC entity you elect gives you more flexibility or freedom to do that in different ways. For example, if you want a lot of investors and people that you're eventually going to be investors in your business, but you're still going to run it, the old standard corporate form may be the best. If you want partners to work with you and run the business with you and also invest money into it, you may be okay with an LLC.
LLC, LLP. Explain what they are and what some of the...
Limited liability company, which is operating as a company and taxed perhaps as a corporation or as a partnership. Limited liability partnership is operated under a different statute. It's as a partnership with, again, limited liability for the partners, as opposed to a general partnership where each partner is liable for what the partnership does and for what the other partners do, perhaps.
Good to know. When we always suggest when someone is starting a business, even as a sole proprietorship, something that's like a DBA doing business as, start a separate checking account, business account, apart from your personal, because keeps a clean audit trail, better for you to understand your ins and outs, your incomes and outgoing, your things that you have to pay. Outflows. So when someone is doing that and they're operating, they can operate as a sole proprietorship, certainly, but as you pointed out, if someone wants to grow, bring on partners, buy something, there's an issue about sometimes having a loan. People can have certainly personal loans, which they'd have to do if they had a sole proprietorship, but if you want to raise money, raise capital, have a loan, does it require, or what is required for someone to take money from a bank, reasonably ask money from a bank to grow a business? C, S, LLC, what are the differences and does it matter?
Yeah, so it doesn't really matter. The bank is giving a loan if it's to the entity, whether it's the corporate entity as a corporation or the limited liability company as an LLC. The banks know how to deal with giving loans to either one of those. They're going to want to see the financials for the business no matter what. And it's going to just different. The only difference being when you take the loan, what paperwork might be generated to create the loan. So if it's an LLC, you're going to have perhaps a manager authorized to sign on behalf of the LLC, or if it's members, the members will have to sign, as opposed to a corporation where the president may be authorized to sign on behalf of the corporation.
Does it matter to someone who's an outside investor, and some people look for angel investors? Certainly how much you can document about your business matters. How about how they would perceive an LLC versus a C versus an S? Any difference?
Yeah, I do think that there could be. And that's what I was talking about. If you're looking for outside investors,
yes,
you might be better with a corporation where you can sell stock rather than the membership interest. And the operating agreement with an LLC is going to have to be really specific and may not be something that an angel investor or outside investor is going to be comfortable with, whereas opposed to investing without having any control or management, maybe some control but no management, no day-to-day operation of the company, the investment angel, so to speak, will be more comfortable perhaps owning stock, which is ownership of the corporation or ownership of part of the corporation, but doesn't expose them to having to run it or deal with it or do anything of that nature.
No direct hands-on.
No direct hands-on.
So suffice it to say, if you're starting a sole proprietorship, less paperwork, any one of these other structures or entities that you're describing, more paperwork. Yep. We like to say that we want to help people do it yourself if it's possible. Is it constructing a corporation, LLC, subchapter S, those things that you would suggest that someone do on their own or not, and why?
If it's just you and you're not worried about what structure you're going to use, you can probably go on the website of the Secretary of State or Secretary of the Commonwealth and figure out what paperwork you need to do articles of incorporation or articles of organization for a corporation or an LLC. You'll probably, if you talk to an accountant, know which boxes to check for your tax election and all of that. Hopefully you'll remember to file the annual reports every year to keep it in full force and effect. So can you do it? Yeah, you can do it. If there's more than one person, then I would be concerned, because what's the agreement between the people? What's going to happen if things really grow? And how are we going to deal with that? What happens if things fail and we have to deal with a dissolution? So you might want some paperwork in place before you get to that point so you know how you're going to deal with those things.
Sole proprietorship versus corporations. Do sole proprietorships need policy manuals and regulations? If they don't have employees, they probably don't need employee manuals. Who should take care of writing those or looking at those?
Well, you should have an attorney do those if it's going to be used by other people. But as you said, a sole proprietorship where it's just you, whether you have some employees or not, different situation. If I were a sole proprietor and I knew I wasn't going to look for any other partners down the road and it was just going to be me, I'd probably form that as an LLC, probably disregard the entity. I don't need an operating agreement because I don't have partners. But if I'm going to have a pretty good-sized business with employees, I might want to have an employee manual or an employee handbook or something so that everybody knows what the rules are of this business and what you're expected to do or not do.
And as you pointed out earlier, independent contractors too, having some understanding about what they are going to be doing, what they're accountable for, what you're liable for, having those kinds of things done, whether you write them or try to draft them from something you find in the internet, which many people do, still worthwhile, would you say, to have a lawyer take a look at it?
Especially to really just put in a place that both of you have signed what your relationship is and what your expectations are.
You mentioned something earlier about actually filing as your business having independent contractors. Is that really necessary?
Is it necessary? It's good practice. It's not necessary. It's better. It's at least better, but it's okay if you at least have something in writing.
And what about the permits and things? You mentioned some hair salons would need them. Others need sales permits.
Right. The ability to collect taxes on sales. There's a lot of different things that you need. And again, there's places to go and find out. I'm going to do this type of business. What do I need? Yes, you can do that. Or you can speak to an attorney who can also advise you.
And if you have an accountant or if you have a payroll company, even if it was just you alone, as a lawyer, do you find that apart from launching a business, getting that structure, that paperwork, the initial documents and policies and procedures in place, do you think that it's necessary to have one on retainer to make sure that as a law changes or a regulation is being considered, debated, is that your responsibility then to share that with the client to make sure they know what to be aware of and how to make changes in their business? When
we represent a business, we meet with them at the start, and then we do an annual report for them every year. The annual articles that get filed to this Secretary of State. And if something comes up that can be raised, and certainly we always are open to having our clients call us and ask questions, run things by us, or just talk about the status of what they're doing and what they need to know.
Once a year?
At least once a year.
At least once a year. And do you also say or recommend to your clients that they look to an accountant to do the same at least once a year?
Yes. Well, yeah, by April 15th, if that's the deadline.
That's right.
And also insurance. I always tell them, no matter what protection you have with your corporation or your LLC, you definitely want to have a lot of insurance in place to protect you.
If someone's looking to retain a lawyer, startup, or during their business, what do you suggest that they ask of their lawyer? Are you familiar with product disclaimers? Are you familiar with some sort of warnings that I need to be aware of? Do you need to ask your prospective lawyer about these things?
Yeah, if you're developing and selling a product, you definitely need to know about product's liability and what warnings are required, what disclosures are required, and who you're selling it to. For instance, if you're selling toys to young children, there are certain things that you can't, and you need to know what those are and how to deal with those, and that's something you may want to speak to an attorney about. And
while we don't really have time to review this today, some people, when they start a business, they actually think that they would rather buy a business that's already existing, namely a franchise. Is there any chance that you would suggest that someone who's considering that go it alone?
No. There's contracts with the franchisor, you're the franchisee. There's a lot of details that go into that. You definitely want to talk to an attorney before you enter into a franchise agreement.
And the real estate and the fees and the rest. Yeah. Not that we don't want people to be able to look at things for themselves, but certainly that can be quite complicated.
Absolutely.
So we hope that in the upcoming year, if you're thinking about starting a business, that this has been helpful to you. We thank you for tuning in to The Law Matters. And as we say, stay tuned to The Law Matters. It matters to you. Thank you.